Hello again! I finally made one of the windows of 3 that I need to make for the 3 kitchen room boxes. And the glass is still a little bit dirty, but that just rubs off. That's not a problem. And I still have to finish the outside and I have to do a little bit more work on it. And the leading here in the window panes is based on 17th and 18th century dolls' houses where they would also do it this way. And it's a stained glass paint painted on the glass and then kiln fired. And each of these window panes has to be kiln fired twice because otherwise you smear the lines, the crossing lines. I can't do that. And so each of these has been fired twice. And I only have a very small kiln, so I can only do 2 glass panes at once, and it's also it's a long process. So this window, these 4 panes have been into the kiln 4 times total. So that was and it takes a few hours. The whole process takes a few hours, and you have to ramp up the temperature, and I have to do it by hand because I have a very simple kiln. So I can't walk away. I have to be there. And it goes in steps. And then it also has to cool down. And there's less steps in cooling down because you can just turn it off at one point. But it's a long process. And this is the first window. And I still have 2 more to go. So that's 8 more kiln firings, and I also have to do all of the leading painting, and it will look something like this. One of the questions I am asked quite regularly is, how did you get into miniatures? Well, last December, just before lockdown here in the Netherlands, I was at the garden center where they had many Christmas villages on display. One of them is the one you're seeing right now, with all the scenes from the province of Friesland here in the Netherlands. And these displays reminded me of how I got started in miniatures. Back in 2002, when my son was 3.5 years old, we visited the same garden center where at that time they also had many Christmas villages on display. And my son loved them and wanted to take all of them home, but as they are quite expensive, I thought I could easily make some of the buildings myself, which I did. And a few days later I went to our local DIY store to get some supplies for the villages and started chatting to the owner. And she turned out to be a Doll's House enthusiast and gave me a stack of Doll's House magazines to read for inspiration. Well, you can guess the rest. I loved it all and I was hooked. And I bought my first Doll's House, well, not even 2 months later. So that was 19 years ago now. And that first Doll's House is now as good as finished. And it's the one I made the video series of, Single 224. And yes, I am still working on the kitchen episode. Sorry about that. Last week, Angie asked me how I cut the groove in the frame for the window where the glass fits into the groove like that. And I do this with my table saw. And I'll show you, it's not very hard. First, I measure the thickness of the glass. And in this case, that's quite thin. Excuse me, 1.9 millimeters. This is not the same glass I used for my windows because I don't have enough of the thin glass. So, and then I have the wood cut to size for the window frame, which is, it's a little bit bigger, but I had this for just for demonstration purposes. And it depends on where you want the glass, but in the middle somewhere. So now I measure the width of my table saw, the blade of my table saw, which is about 1.6 millimeters. So if the glass was 1.6 or 1.5, then I would only need one cut. But it's not. So we need 2 cuts, but it's not very difficult. I would like to have it somewhere in the middle. So I'm just doing this by eye now, but you can measure if you like. Then I have to find out how high the blade has to be. So I'm going to lower it down. And you can do this by using the back of your, what's it called? Calipers? And if you don't want it too deep, let's say this is the depth you want. That's about 1.5 millimeters. Then this bit on the back of your calipers will stick out. And you could put that on top of your saw blade and then raise the saw blade to the height you want. There we go. That's 1.5 millimeters up. And then, of course, we want it in the middle. I just put it next to the saw blade and just do this by eye. But you can measure it if you like. And this is not a very good saw. What's that called? Fence. Tiny bit. There we go. That should be good. Then we'll turn it around. Now I don't, you could do this with your fingers, but it's a bit, the wood is a bit thin, so that could be dangerous. So I just used a large block of wood to push it down. And then I'm just going to put my ears on. There. And once you've cut that, there you go, there's the first cut. Then I turn it round, so it came out like this. I turn it round like that and do the same cut, which means that the cut is going to be in the middle because you've turned it around. So these two, because we've turned it round, the cut has been made on the exact same width from the sides. So this is exactly in the middle. And now we'll check whether it is. There we go. It's perfect. Now, if you want to paint this wood, you have to take into account that paint it's going to be quite thick in relation to the cut you've made. So you may want to cut it 1 millimeter wider, or 0.5 millimeter wider, to leave room for the paint. Otherwise your glass is not going to be able to fit inside anymore. And if you want to make the groove slightly wider, then you just move your fence a fraction to the right. And I mean a fraction. Tighten it and run it through the saw again twice. So run it through, turn it over, do it again. So both sides, the distance of the cut to both of the sides will remain the same, if that's what you want. But that's it. It's really easy. I will do a tutorial on how to make a sliding glass window, but that will be in the future sometime. I wanted to start vlogging months ago, but I never got round to it because I was working on, well, still am working on the Canal House series, my single 224 Canal House series. And during that time, in the beginning when I planned on starting to vlog, I saw several auctions which were quite interesting. And this is one of them, although it's not to my taste. I thought it was interesting, and this is a huge doll's house. And the winning bid was for €2,055. And of course, it says there's 21% tax to pay on top of that. So that's something like €2,500. It's quite a lot of money. But if you look at the doll's house, so here you can see the front comes off, and here the steps come off. And then the interiors are completely filled with furniture and a couple of dolls as well. Now, as I said, it's far too ornate for my taste, but as you can see, I think that's all, what is that, Bestback furniture. And I'm not a fan of the gold, all of the gold and all that, but it's quite charming in a way. Someone has spent a long time working on this, and there's lots of little detail and many miniatures in there. So that's actually, if you add all that up, that's not a bad price. Here's the bathroom, and again, for me it's far too ornate, but I know, and lots of dresses and all that kind of stuff. But these things can be bought. Here's a doll playing the piano. As you can hear, my voice still hasn't recovered from my COVID shot last week. But this is interesting. And lots of lights, crystal chandeliers. Yeah. These things are expensive. Now, what I'll try to do in the future, if there's something coming up and I'm in time for the auction, I will let you know that the auction is there. And there you go. There's a side shot. It's not a bad house at all. But that's what I wanted to say. I'll let you know. If I know of one, I'll let you know that it's going on. And I won't be, running after the facts, as we say here. So that's what I'll do.